Today you're listening to Old Head Mindset Podcast with Rickey and Rickey Tillman. Today we're talking about how to deal with tumultuous times.
My dad asked me what is an issue that's plaguing the youth at the moment, particularly in Australia, and the clear and obvious answer was young people's response to the economy being as bad as it is. Prices in some cases have tripled. Every day on social media you're seeing people post a packet of chips that's like $7, which is expensive over here in Australia. And but along with that, I'm seeing a lot of posts from people who are mentally compromised with the current situation. Now, myself included, these are very stressful times, and why I wanted to bring it up to my dad is because, as they say, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. However, for young people who just a few years ago were likely either young 20-year-olds or teenagers even, we've gone into what happened with the pandemic, and now we've plunged into this time where it's difficult to rent, it's difficult to find a place to live, and it paints a very bleak picture about what adulthood is like. So I feel as if talking to my dad about how time flows, it ebbs and flows. There's good times and bad times. There's times where things are cheap and times where things are expensive. I think it can give an overall positive insight into things are going to be okay, even if things are bad for the moment. But beyond that, just talking about uncertain times generally, it could be with relationship, it could be with you don't have a job at the moment and you have rent. So that's the angle that we're talking about today. So my first question is, how do you deal with the anxiety that comes about when either you might be struggling to pay rent, or the economy seems like it's not going to improve? Have you experienced something like that before, and how do you approach that?
I think you really have to try not to look too far in the future. You got to take one day at a time, and then map out a plan on what you want to do with your life and where you want to position yourself. You don't want to be looking at what other people have and what other people got and what they don't have. You want to focus on yourself. I always just really stayed in my lane and focus on what do I want. No matter what condition or climate I'm in, I always just pay attention to what I felt like I had control of, right? And so when times are tough, then you have to become tough, right? So you sit down and you think about where you're at, and then you map out a plan on where you want to be. So that's the game of life, a good game plan. So no matter what's going on in the economy, you have to start figuring out ways on how you can take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's an interesting point you brought up, to focus on yourself, especially because we live in times where everyone sees everything about everyone's life, and it's probably very difficult for young people to not compare themselves to others. That where we live in times where it's like $5 for some milk, but you're looking, which you might be struggling to pay for groceries, and you're looking at someone who's 5 years younger than you, living in a mansion on social media. So it's people say young people have it all in these times, but there's just like a point of self-comparison that I don't think has ever existed in human existence. About with name me a time where one person can see millions of people having more than what they have, people, 24-year-old billionaires or whatever it is. And
Yeah. So you just explained the traps. This is a trap that you're living in. Because of social media, you can go on the internet and you can, even if you don't want to, something pop up where you see someone who's your age or younger, who's doing things that has more, and I be making it look like it's easy to become a millionaire. Then what do? You start comparing yourself to that person, and why me? Why I can't have that? And that's a trap that you can easily fall into. So you have to be aware of that and understand the game of life. So what I will be doing is getting busy looking at my situation and not ever compare myself to others. I think I've spoken to you about that. That's a trap across the board on any level. When you compare yourself to others, you're setting yourself up for a lot of misery. So you have to treat your life like it's in your own little world, and you're trying to get the most and the best out of yourself. And it doesn't matter if you're doing better or less or worse than someone else. What matters is how you're feeling about how you're moving in life. So how you feeling about getting up, going to work today, and how you feel about where you're headed in life, all your plans falling into place. But if you fall into the trap of start comparing others, immediately you're going to start to feel bad about yourself and bad about your life. And then what does that do for you for that day? It puts you in a hole where you have to dig out of before you can even start the day. And so if you do that day in and day out, what follows that is sometimes it can be anxiety and stress and depression. So it's the words that you use and tell yourself, and also the things, your action, the things you do. If you get up in the morning and you crank your phone up and you look at social media, and then you start seeing people who are conquering the world, and here you are, your world is not. Immediately you think your world is not what it should be. So you just started out your day in a very negative light. Instead of saying, you know what, I'm not going to look at the social media. I'm going to look at where I am and understand who I am. Am I happy today? What am I going to do today for my life? Not comparing yourself to others.
Yeah, but even that with the comparing yourself to others, it's unbalanced because most people aren't opening their phone and then looking at, war-torn countries. Well, they might be at the moment, but they're not looking at, people who are starving, people who live in third world countries. Wow, I have a lot. Looking at the exact opposite, looking at Kylie Jenner and people buying expensive stuff. But I just wanted to take it more back to the kind of fear, because I feel like fear is the main driver of people's strife at the moment. About like, how would you relate to someone who's got a normal job, just day job, and they're struggling to pay rent, and food's expensive, and they don't want to go out because they don't want to waste money? How would you respond to a person in that situation?
Well, there's stages in life. You're at that stage where you're just getting started. So anything you could just get started in, you're gonna struggle. So be aware of that okay, this is the struggling stage. Now how do I fit in that struggling stage? And it comes down to your mindset and how you feel about what you're going through. Because everyone in this life is going through it. Everyone that's at the stage that you're at has had to go through the struggles. So now how do I fit in there? Do I want to feel every bit of that struggle, or do I want to get my mind right and say, okay, how can I fast track this process? So how can I get from point A to point B? Because in the middle there is the struggle. So what I would do is, I didn't think about as much as we didn't worry about as much as where I'm at. I was too focused on where I wanted to be. So if you get your head down, it's called putting your head down and bum up. When you look up, when you start to look up and look at the world, and you look at, again, comparing things, and you're thinking, where am I going, where I'm not going, what about tomorrow, where I'm going to be tomorrow, or I'm not going to have this, I'm missing out on that, I can't even go by myself. You start feeling less than, and you start feeling like your world is not, it's crap.
So how do you balance then putting your head down and working towards you want to go, but also not being caught up in thinking about the future too much?
So when you starting out, you gotta stay focused on the day right now. Me personally, I always sort of plan for the future, and it's sort of a mistake that I did as well. I always would try to prepare and plan for the future, and I wasn't living in the now. And this is a problem. When you are starting out, you're always trying to prepare where you want to be at in the future, instead of living, having that balance and living where you're at right now. So, and that means that you lose your joy, you lose your energy and enthusiasm towards life, because you're so busy worried about tomorrow. So you have to pull that back, and everything in life is all about balance. If you put anything out of balance, it's going to put you out of, in a state. So if you're constantly worrying and planning and preparing for the future, your now, where you live it now, is going to be out of balance, and you're not going to be content, and you're not going to know why. So you have to keep things in balance. Say, prepare for the future, but don't worry about the future, because you're living right now.
So what you're saying reminds me of, I don't know if you've heard of him, but his name's Eckhart Tolle. He's I think he's Scandinavian or German or something, but he's a so-called enlightened man. And he speaks about, he wrote a book called The Power of Now, and he speaks about be in the present moment, but you don't neglect that the future exists. You kind of act as if it's like a tapestry. Like you have a tapestry of your whole life, but you're only looking at like one part of it. So it's interesting you said that there is this kind of, because to some it might be contradictory to focus on the future, but being in the moment as well. But there is this kind of synthesis and overlap. It seems like that you're talking about. But I guess when you're young, it's hard to see that.
It is hard. You still learning to develop that skill set and that mindset. It just, when you constantly think about the future, like I said, your now, where you're living right now, is going to be out of balance. So you have to balance a little bit, balance that out as much as you can. So what you want to do is devise a plan, design your own life. Devise a plan and design your own life is what you have to do. So don't focus on other people. Don't focus on what the future will become or what it's going to become, what it's going to be like in the future. Live for right now. Enjoy your friends. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your day. If you struggle to do that, find ways of discovering what makes you tick, what makes you happy, what makes you feel imbalanced, what makes you feel enriched, or what makes you feel enlightened. So find these things, and that'll boost your energy and your creativity to the point that the things that you've been thinking that you want to do, you'll wake up starting to implement those things, because you have the energy, the belief, and the insight on what to do. But if you get distorted with worry and fear, it destroys all that. It destroys your creativity, your energy, and your want. How do you want to do and get out of bed if you're too busy worrying and preparing for tomorrow? So those are the things.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that explanation. It seems that, the issue which I've brought up to you before in the past is the issue when you're young is that you haven't seen how things change. There are ups and downs. Like when you start off and there are only downs, it feels like all life is downs. So
you feel like you're in a trough. You're in a hole.
I would say even worse. I would feel like it isn't a trough, because a trough implies that there's out of a trough. But like if you were to get like a baby and only give him negative experiences, he's gonna think all life is negative experiences. So I think that these economic times will get better, and then when they do get better, it'll kind of give younger people the wisdom that things change, things go up, things go down, So
Well, when you say economic time is going to get better, it makes me think that, okay, you possibly, or people are possibly thinking that when the economy is better, you're going to be better. But that's not that's not necessarily the truth.
yeah,
In order for your world to be better, you have to be better. So it doesn't really matter too much what the economy is dictating. It's what your thought pattern and how you think about where you at. It's what's making your world. So, because there are people right now in this economy who are doing fantastic. So that means that if they can do it, you can do it.
So that's an interesting point, because I guess the economy can be used as a bit of a scapegoat to kind of put all of,
Well, that's the thing where people will give a reason for why they feeling how they feeling. I'm in this hole because the economy is bad, and the future don't look bright. But really, what's happening is you just gotten busy destroying your own economy, your emotional economy, your self-belief economy, your take action economy, your enthusiasm economy. All of that stuff matters. So if you're waking up every day saying bad words or speaking things to yourself, you're destroying your economy of health, mental health. So how can you shoot for the stars if you put yourself in a position? So I have to maintain my mental health, and that's my job. How do I make sure that I'm okay? Not how do I compare to my neighbor? How do I compare to my friends? I don't fall for those traps, and I'm telling you, that is a trap that will keep you in a state. So the message here is get busy focusing on you. Shrink your world down to where you're trying to go and what you want to do with yourself, and then take action. Put a plan in place and take action in that small world. Now the world going to continue to flow around you. It's going to continue to do what it does, but in your world, it doesn't matter what's happening out there. My world is what it is, and you'll be doing those steps. Before you know it, you'll find yourself in places that you've been trying to get to. But if you focus on what's out here, it just sucks all the energy on what's going on in here, in your world. So that's what you have to be careful of.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. But no, thank you for that piece of wisdom. I hope a lot of people got something from it, if not just a little bit of perspective. I know.
The main message I would like people to understand and to get is stop comparing yourself to others. Get busy focusing on yourself and how you fit into your world. That's the message.
Yeah, and maybe tune out the doomsday kind of attitude. People on social media have. News organizations like to spin that, a very negative tone to our situation.
So the things you watch on YouTube is the same thing as the things that you read in books. So whatever you feed in your mind is what you're going to become. So if you're feeding your mind with negative stuff that you see on YouTube, that's what your mind is going to be like. So those are another tip where be careful what you're feeding your mind. Feed your mind positive stuff. Always. So,
and I hope that,
especially when you're in a state, you're not in a position to be looking at negative things. It doesn't do anything for you.
I hope that we've provided at least some positive spin on the current situation. And so thank you for listening. Hope you got something from it. And any last words you want to say?
Well, if you like what you're listening to, hit the subscribe button and follow us on Old Head Mindset Podcast.